Hello and welcome to the Burn KC ScorchCast. I am your host, Alex Blackburn, here to bring you the good KC sports news. And y'all, it's pretty good today. If you didn't hear, the Chiefs played in a little something last night. For a certain trophy that, believe it or not, was named after a toy that Lamar Hunt's daughter actually had, and it was named after Silly Putty, basically. She made a Super Bowl with her Silly Putty, I think is how the story goes, and the name just kind of stuck, I suppose. But very drawn out story short, the Chiefs won the Super Bowl last night, 25-22 in overtime in what was a fantastic game. Chiefs repeated as Super Bowl champions, so first repeat in 6,944 days, or roughly 20 years. So we're going to talk about that with this upcoming show. We're also going to, my mic is huge in that shot. Apologies, but. We're going to talk about some college basketball as well. We really don't have a ton to talk about other than those two subjects. But I will have a few things regarding college football, the Royals, and of course the Blues here coming up in the minor news segment. So sit back, sit tight, and enjoy the ride. This is going to be a fun show. Okay. So let's talk the Chiefs, shall we? The Chiefs are back-to-back Super Bowl champions. The first ever back-to-back Super Bowl champions since 20 years ago when the Patriots did it. I can't remember the exact date off the top of my head. But they were the last ones to do it. I believe it was 2003 and 2004 is when they repeated. Or actually, no, because in 2003, it may have been, well, no, because, let me look that up real quick, because I know it's the Patriots. I can't remember for the life of me what years, though. Give me just a second. Back-to-back Super Bowl winners. Yeah, it was the Patriots in 2003 and 2004. Okay, for some reason, because the Buccaneers won it, I think a year prior to that, and then the Steelers won it in 2005. So, I don't know. Maybe I just got my dates mixed up there. But, yeah, Patriots in 2003 and 2004 were the last ones to do it. Kansas City does join them on the short list of NFL franchises to win back-to-back Super Bowls. Officially, they're a dynasty. I was hesitant, I'd say, to call it a dynasty, even after they beat the Ravens, mainly because I was just like, dynasty is like when you win the championships. Dynasty is when, you have the same like core group of guys that win you those championships. Kansas City have one of those. But overall, I was hesitant because I was just like, what if the Chiefs, go to this Super Bowl and just get waxed? And I didn't think that was going to happen by any stretch of the imagination. I thought it was going to be a super close game the whole way, and it was. But, if the Chiefs were to just get destroyed, what would you have to say? That's not a dynasty. A dynasty is defined by their dominance, and After this win, after, getting over the hurdles that were the 49er was the 49er defense. I mean, it's hard to say that, oh yeah, this Chiefs team, isn't up there with, the 90s Dallas Cowboys, with the 2000s Patriots teams, and all those teams that were just special breeds. Um, I think they're right up there with them. And I think it's time we have a conversation that, Patrick Mahomes potentially is the greatest quarterback of all time. And I don't think there's a whole lot of people that would argue with you that he's at least top three at this point. And, I get it. He's only 28. He's only won three Super Bowls. Brady, by the time he turned 28, I'm pretty sure also won three because he had the one in 2001. That was his first one. He had the two in '03 and '04. He had was it the one in '08? No, because he got beat by the Giants in '08. I think it's only three for Brady at age 28. So yeah, I don't understand where this concept of, oh yeah, Patrick Mahomes doesn't deserve to be in the greatest of all time conversation. What are you talking about? He's got the stats to back it up. He's got the wins to back it up. He wasn't nearly as coddled by the team surrounding him as Brady was. And to be frank, if he stays in the league for as long as Brady does, I think he could easily get more Super Bowls. But that's if he stays in the league as long as Brady did. And we all know how long Brady stayed in the league. So it's 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 intriguing to me that there are so many people, and I guess it happened with Brady too, but it seems like it's amplified with Patrick Mahomes. And maybe that's just because, I'm a Chiefs fan. I, surround myself with this team's news on a daily basis, so maybe that's why. But it seems like the hate for Patrick Mahomes is amplified more than the hate for Brady was. I think a lot of people after Brady won his like fourth or fifth Super Bowl were just like, oh yeah, no, Brady's great. Mind you, Brady didn't win that fourth Super Bowl for, gosh, how long? It wasn't. It was there was a gap in between his first three and then the fourth one, which I'm not saying could happen with Patrick Mahomes too. I mean, but you have to understand, three Super Bowls in 5 years is exactly what Brady did. So, I mean, let's be honest here. Patrick Mahomes absolutely could pass Brady. So, is what it is. Regarding that GOAT conversation, just going over the key moments here. Like Andy said, how about that defense? The defense stepped up when it needed to. It caused the turnovers. Yeah, were a couple of them caused by 49er miscues. That punt, Ray McLeod absolutely should have called for a fair catch, and he shouldn't have touched it. Like, it's unbelievable how impactful that decision was. That's the decision that all but decided the game. I mean, defense and special teams was the thing that defined this game for both teams. Um, when when Mike Dana blocked the field goal, that was a huge deciding play. When Ray McLeod muffed the punt, that was a huge deciding play. Harrison Butker's 57-yard field goal, that was a deciding play. Like, there's levels to these key moments, and almost all of them are from defensive and the defense and special teams. I went so far as to, if the 49ers were to win, to name Chris Conley MVP because he was making so many plays. And, as a former Chief, that hurt my heart. But, eh, just he's on the 49ers now, and the 49ers were obnoxious all week long. So, yeah, screw them. And it's I hate seeing guys that I do enjoy watching play. Christian McCaffrey, Brock Purdy's decently enjoyable. Debo Samuel's really enjoyable to watch. Um, shoot, Jawan Jennings was enjoyable to watch last night. And I remember watching him in his West Virginia days, and I was just like, man, this kid's going to be great in the league. And he hasn't been great necessarily, but he's made some huge plays. And he made a couple last night. I think didn't he score both touchdowns? Because I'm pretty sure he was the one that spun into the end zone, and then he was the one that threw the touchdown for the Niners. So I think he probably would have been named MVP if the Niners were to win, but um, they didn't. So the voters kind of had to go with the cop out answer and Patrick Mahomes to be honest, because there really wasn't anybody that like stood out head and shoulders on the Chiefs. This was a team effort. I think the closest person to even rival Mahomes for the MVP spot was Mecole Hardman because of his huge catch that unfortunately, yeah, did result on a fumble the next play. But, scoring the game winner and looking as good as he did shows you why the Chiefs picked him up in the first place. I mean, he knows this offense. He knows what they like to run with, fast guys that can get downfield quick and get separation. And that's exactly what happened is they ran corn dog. They ran those deep crossing routes and trusted their receivers, and the receivers paid dividends because I don't remember a receiver ever dropping a ball. I think Justin Watson dropped one, but that's it. That's all I can remember really. So that's huge. So kudos to the wide receivers for stepping up. Kudos to the defense and special teams. Just overall, a full team performance from the Chiefs is what got them this victory. And that's what they needed for that victory. And I even said so in last week's ScorchCast. This is going to be a full team effort. Everyone is going to have to be, it's going to have to be all hands on deck. And that's exactly what happened. And the Chiefs reaped the reward. So, and unfortunately, with the Niners, that's the exact opposite of what happened because their special teams failed them. Their defense failed them when it mattered. And just, it was rough to watch because I do like some of the 49ers players. I don't like them as an organization, though. I think they were crybabies the entire 2 weeks between the championship week and the Super Bowl. I think they did too much complaining. I don't think they did enough preparation. And overall, it showed. So, again, congrats to the Chiefs on a big win. They're going to be better next year. I'm just going to say that right now. Once Veach overcorrects with the wide receivers, once he signs L'Jarius Sneed and potentially even Chris Jones, if he can pull that out of his hat, this Chiefs team, their window's not closed just because they've repeated. They have the strong potential for a three-peat, and a lot of people don't recognize that. So I think they're going to be out with a vengeance to get that three-peat because, frankly speaking, there were a couple times during these past 5 years that they came awful close. So we'll see what comes, but congrats to the Chiefs on the Super Bowl victory. The city is so proud of you, and I can't wait to see what's next for Patrick Mahomes and company. So, and by the way, Andy Reid's not retiring. They're already talking about extending him for at least the next 5 years. So, um, keep your keep your ears to social media for that. I'm certainly going to do so and report back what I hear on here because it's what I do. Let's go into some college basketball. All right, let's talk some college basketball here. Let's start out with Kansas. Kansas fell to number 6 after this past week in the AP poll. They had a loss against Kansas State, and then they beat Baylor this past Saturday, 64 to 61. And that's about what I expected. I figured that they would fall at least a spot or two after that loss to Kansas State, just given the Ken Palm and everything like that, net rankings, whatever. There's a lot that goes into rankings. A lot of it is way more complicated than it needs to be. But it's college basketball. Stats matter. Strength of schedule matters. All of that matters to a degree. But in the end, I think it's more or less, especially this year with how competitive the Big 12 is and just really how competitive men's basketball is in general. Um, it's the hardest it's ever been to rank teams properly. Um, but Kansas has another big one on the docket tonight. They're going to be taking on Texas Tech in Lubbock at 8 p.m. So potentially, as you're watching this video, they're taking on Tech right now. But you know, they're going to be without Kevin McCullough. He's already been ruled out with an injury. DeJuan Harris did get injured this past Saturday. However, he is supposed to suit up tonight. They're going to see how he's feeling at shoot around. So he's trending up towards playing. Last I checked. So that's a big one. This is going to be another tough matchup for KU. This is on the road. You don't really have all that deep of a bench. You're dealing with injuries. You're dealing with a really hostile environment with Lubbock. Lubbock's always been a really challenging place for the Jayhawks to play. And this time is no different. And you're going to be without a key starter. You're going off of a really short turnaround. Jamari McDowell also is going to be out, so your bench is even thinner than it already was. You're going to need guys to step up. You're going to need Nick Timberlake. You're going to need El Marco Jackson. You're going to need just production from your bench in order to win this game. Otherwise, you might not really be competitive in this one. Texas Tech, yeah, they fell from the ranking this past week. They've been kind of up and down this year. They're still a team that is vying for a top 5 spot in the Big 12 and could easily, with a couple good wins, be top of the Big 12 when all is said and done. But that starts with beating Kansas tonight. And if they can do that, that's a big notch in their belt. So Kansas has to take this game seriously, and Kansas has to understand Texas Tech is not going to pull any punches tonight, whether you're thin on roster or not. And you haven't been all that good on the road this year. You lost to West Virginia. You've lost to UCF. You've lost to Iowa State. Um, you've lost to Kansas State. All of those road losses. So, just overall, this is going to be a big time litmus test. And again, it comes off of a 48-hour turnaround. So it's certainly going to be a game to watch. I would just based off of the only little bit that I've watched of Texas Tech basketball, um, the perimeter shooting is going to be huge. Um, it almost always is with the Jayhawks, but um, you have to guard the perimeter. You have to make sure Pop Isaacs doesn't get any momentum. Uh, I think inside you're pretty fine. Hunter Dickinson, showed a lot of great things when guarding Missy of Baylor this past game. I expect him to continue that. It sounds like he was one of those guys that was dealing with illness during the K-State game. So I think he's just trending on his way back and hopefully will be really productive tonight. I expect a lot of in the paint scoring for Kansas tonight. Texas Tech really doesn't have like a substantial front court, but they're still serviceable and they've still, I don't want to say they've taken over games, but they've certainly been productive. Um, but that perimeter is going to be huge. And Kansas is going to have to make threes of their own. But the perimeter defense is what is going to make or break this game, which means Nick Timberlake can't shoot inside to cover the drive. He has to cover that corner. He has to cover whoever he's going to be on and not the ball. So hopefully Bill got that through his head after the debacle that was his 3-point defense this past game. So overall, that's kind of what KU's night is looking like. And again, big game with big Big 12 complications, um, such as the case when playing KU for every team, basically. Um, Speaking of teams that have beaten KU, though, Kansas State, not the best outing in the whole wide world. When you went to Provo to go play BYU for the first time ever, um 6-point loss isn't terrible to a ranked team when they're at home, but they just did not look good that whole game. I mean, I think they were down by as many as like 14 or 15 at one point. And way to come back and at least make it a game, but at the same time, you need more productivity. You couldn't just rest on your laurels if you want to have any shot at number one making the tournament, but number two finding yourself in line to be one of those top teams heading into March in the Big 12. Which I still think Kansas State can do, just given how competitive the Big 12 is this year. Um, so it's going to be a big couple of weeks for Kansas State, and it starts on Saturday versus a huge matchup with TCU. TCU's basically right there with Kansas State, and just like you've had your really, really good games, and you've had some really just bad games that are forgettable, that are sloppy, and you know, in the case of TCU, for sure, you had a top team in the nation on the ropes, and you kind of just let it go. Um, and that simply can't happen in Big 12 basketball. Because again, this league is so cannibalistic that every loss that you suffer is a huge one. So that'll be a huge matchup on Saturday to kind of define which of these teams is trending up and which of these teams will be trending down for the foreseeable future for the rest of February. So keep watch for that one. Finally, let's talk about Mizzou. Oh man. Wow, wow, wow. Missouri basketball has been abysmal this year. Um it, they're 0-11 in SEC play. 0-11. They lost to Vanderbilt. I I think there's a real question going around in the Missouri camp because this is not a bad roster by any stretch. They've got a lot of talent on this roster and guys that were a part of last year's team that did so well. Um, and just I I'm not sure what needs to be done to make Missouri basketball competitive in the SEC again. Because right now it's a dumpster fire. Your producers aren't producing anything. It's been sloppy basketball after sloppy basketball all around. Um, the offense is completely inept. I mean, you scored 51 points against Mississippi State, which is not a terrible team, but there's certainly a lot. Missouri basketball is a lot better than just scoring a measly 51 points against a kind of upper middle of the pack team in the SEC. I mean, plain and simple. Kansas should have ran this team out of the gym if they were a bad team. But I don't think it's the Missouri players, at least, that are bad. I think it's the lack of good coaching. And you can say, well, what about last year with Dennis Gates? What about how good he was at Cleveland State, blah blah blah. Uh, there's no accountability. There's no one that wants to step up and say, "Hey, like let's turn this season around. We have the talent to do so. We've been competitive with teams like Kansas, with teams like Kentucky, with teams like Illinois." And I, this is going to be a rough season for Missouri. It already has been, but when all is said and done, Missouri may not win a conference game. And if and when that happens, is it time to fire Dennis Gates? I think that's what we'll have to answer come this week. I think that may be a burning question. So stay tuned for that. But we got a few minor things to go over regarding college football, regarding the Royals, and then regarding the Blues. And then we'll wrap this up. So sit tight and thank you for joining me. So sit tight. All right. Last little bit of news here, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up. Um, in college football news, we've got a couple things that have to do with Kansas and Missouri. So for Kansas, Kansas just welcomed a new defensive backs coach to replace Jordan Peterson, who is off to Texas A&M to go be their defensive coordinator. So DK McDonald, who previously worked with the Philadelphia Eagles, and has done a lot of different jobs around both the NFL and in college, he is going to be the new defensive backs coach and co-defensive coordinator for the Kansas Jayhawks, which I think is a fantastic hire. Um, Lance is snagging NFL talent. If that doesn't show you how crazy of a turnaround Kansas football has had, I don't know what does. That's a huge signing. I think needs to get talked about more. Expect a college football dogs article to come out regarding that situation. I got one getting made up right now, so just hang tight. It will probably be out in the next couple of days. As for Missouri, So obviously they got a new defensive coordinator. Gary Batoon is their new defensive coordinator. I think he was with Clemson before. Let me clarify that. Ba, 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 ba. Corey Batoon. Oh, he was actually with Missouri. So it's Corey Batoon, not Gary Batoon. Corey Batoon. So he was with Missouri as an assistant for a long time. So he got elevated and will be the new defensive coordinator. So congrats to him. But there's also been some rumors surrounding Kirby Moore, the offensive coordinator for the Tigers. Potentially, he could be leaving. Sorry, he could be leaving for Alabama. He's got a good relationship with new head coach Kalen DeBoer. He's got roots in Alabama, as well as with DeBoer. I believe he coached with them for a while. Um, However, the big kicker here is Missouri has the buyout money to protect Kirby Moore from getting stolen by Alabama. I mean, plain and simple, I think it's like 54 million or something like that in buyout money. So that easily matches anything that Bama could do. Um, so I don't think there's any fire there with that little bit of smoke, but definitely keep an eye on it. As far as the Royals go, pitchers and catchers report tomorrow. So baseball season is right around the corner. Um, and for the first time in quite a while, to be honest, a lot of people are excited about Royals baseball. They had a few really good signings. Obviously, they secured Bobby Witt for the long term. Um, and overall, it's looking like it's going to be a season where the Royals could potentially be competitive for the AL Central. So, big things are happening. And the first little inkling of baseball season happens tomorrow. So gonna be good. Hopefully the Royals can bring home another Cactus League trophy, but also do well in the regular season. So as for the Blues, practice begins March 5th for the Kansas City Blues. It'll be out at the Kansas City current facility over off of 635 in Parkville, Missouri. Get there if you can. You don't need to be rugby experienced to play. You just need to have a drive and a will to try new things. Or if you're familiar with rugby, try things and hang out with a bunch of cool homies. So, um, also, congrats to the new executive board. I'm not going to name all of them here. I apologize. My brain can't remember all those names. But congrats to the new executive board. I know you all will do great things. And kudos to everyone that got nominated, and a big congratulations to everybody that got voted in. This is going to be a good exec board. I do know that for a fact. There's a lot of good names on that board. So that's our show. Thank you very much for joining me here. I know it may be a little short, it seems, but overall, there's really just two like large pieces of news to talk about, and we talked about them. So, thank you very much for joining me. Next week, I should be able to release on time. Just kind of have to figure a few things out. But overall, thank you much. Excuse me. Thank you very much for joining. Have a great night. This has been the Burn KC signing off.